Hey, welcome to Faith Talk Today. I'm Rick Probst. Hey, you might look around and see a deficit of leadership in our country, in our churches, even in our communities. But my next guest, sees something different. He sees opportunity, and you may recognize that face. He's everywhere, and we love what he's saying. Pastor Alan Jackson believes that there's a huge leadership potential right now in the workplaces, schools, churches, communities, everywhere. He's talking about it in his brand new book, Lead with Faith, Using Your Influence for God's Purposes. Pastor, how are you?
I'm doing well, Rick. It's good to be with you again.
Thank you so much for what you do. As I mentioned before we went live, you are everywhere and you continue to be the watchman, if you will, in so many formats and so many places. It's amazing. You've got podcasts, books, and we're specifically talking about this one. I love what you say about the real deficit isn't resources, but it's a reluctance to lead with our faith. Let's talk about that.
Well, this really came out of, I'm a pastor, I serve a congregation, and I recognize that in the community that I'm a part of, there are multiple world-class leaders, some in business, some in academia, some with the hobbies of their choice. And yet when it came to bringing their faith into those discussions, I saw that they didn't have the same confidence that they've had professionally or in their places of the training. And that's unfortunate. How do we sit in church for decades and then not have the faith to take our belief system into the marketplace? So we went to work on that, and it's changed our congregation, it's impacted our community, and I'm praying that we can impact our nation with it.
We love that. I was watching a video that you had preached about this particular topic. It was back in 22, I think, and it was so good. It's a good book, and we want you folks to get it. Check it out. Lead with Faith, Using Your Influence for God Purposes. What is our influence? What's influence look like, Pastor?
Well, there are people, every one of us have people that care about our opinion. They want to know what we think, whether it's about, the best recipe we've had lately to feed our family, or a new management tool we've used at work, or something we've learned in academia, or maybe you work in a hospital or the legal system, wherever it may be. There's somebody that cares about your opinion. And to not let your advocacy for Jesus be a part of that communication is really a forfeiture we just can't tolerate any longer. We've got to take our faith with us back into the public square.
Pastor Alan Jackson with us. You, of course, hear him here at Faith Talk Atlanta, the new book, Lead with Faith, Using Your Influence for God's Purposes. You talk about in the book that you see a new generation of leaders right now. What are you seeing that's giving you confidence for that?
Well, I think we saw it in so much of the things that emerged around Charlie Kirk and then his tragic death, but the young people who were touched by his courage to go to college campuses and talk about the issues that were facing our young people and just open the door to a biblical worldview. And I don't think what he was saying was particularly controversial. I think every youth pastor in America, every pastor in America ought to have been talking about the things Charlie was talking about. But it kind of awakened me to the reality that young people are anxious. They are open and hungry to know the truth. And you don't have to be angry or critical or judgmental. You sure don't have to be violent. But we got to have the courage to talk about Jesus in a biblical worldview wherever the Lord takes us.
When you started preaching the series and you released the book and you saw the lights go on in the congregation and those around you, how'd that make you feel?
Well, it was encouraging for me in the local congregation because I watched them begin to put it into practice, and then they start coming back with their God stories, and that's fascinating the gospel really does work. It's transformational stuff. And if we'll take it outside of our church, the tragedy is we've been coached to kind of leave our faith at the door of the church. And I think that's as much a fallacy as if you imagined you're only married when you're at home. That when you leave the confines of your home, you slip off your wedding ring, but you don't have to pick up the commitments to that covenant until you get back home again. Well, that's kind of what we've done with our faith. You can be a good Christian when you're at church, but don't bring it to the marketplace. Don't bring it to the public square. Don't bring it to academia. And that just makes no sense to me. You don't have to preach at people or condemn people, but you can be an advocate for Jesus wherever you go, and I believe we should.
Pastor Alan Jackson talking about his brand new book, Lead with Faith, Using Your Influence for God's Purposes. We'll tell you in just a bit where you can get it. you'll also want to check out some of the resources that Pastor Jackson has. Some videos. He's got a podcast. He's got a lot of things going on. Let's talk about faith-driven leadership. What does that look like once everybody locks in our countries, our communities, our churches? What's the end result?
Well, I think the end result would be an expansion of the influence of our faith. You know, the fabric of our culture for decades and decades, we're 250 years old now, but for the first 200 years or so, the fabric of our culture was really inseparable from a Judeo-Christian worldview. It doesn't mean we were ever a uniquely Christian nation in that everybody had to be Christian,
Right.
or that we had a state-mandated faith or way to believe. But our social values were derived from a Judeo-Christian worldview. We've lost that in the last few decades. It's been intentionally dismantled and limited. And I think we're going to have to walk back into those places, because if we withdraw our biblical worldview from the public square, it's not that it's absent of a worldview. There's a worldview there that predominates. It's just ungodly. And we can't tolerate that, or we will lose our freedoms and liberties. So we've got to get our faith outside the church building, outside of Sunday morning or Saturday night or whenever you worship, and take it with us back into the corridors of the hospital and the courtrooms and the classrooms and all the places that we go.
Pastor Alan Jackson from Alan Jackson Ministries. You hear him here at Faith Talk Atlanta. A new book, Lead with Faith, Using Your Influence for God's Purposes. You can get it at Amazon. You can also get it at alanjackson.com. We got a few minutes left, Pastor. Let's talk a little bit about the Alan Jackson now is on TBN, YouTube, Real Life Network. We love Jack Hibbs and the gang. They're doing some amazing things.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about it. How's it going?
It's going really well. We started the initiative just about 2 years ago. We wanted to take current events and try to understand them through the filter of a biblical worldview. And we found there was a whole lot of things that Christians seem to be reluctant to talk about because our people would say you're being political. But I don't believe marriage is a political issue. I think it's a biblical issue. I don't think the notion of a nuclear family is a political issue. I think that's a biblical issue. I don't think sexual morality or immorality is a political issue, or the sanctity of human life. I mean, there's a long list of things that populate current culture that the church has been silent on because we didn't want to get labeled. And I'm willing to be labeled as a Christ follower, and if there's some negative label that comes because of that, I guess I can accept those too. But I believe we have to have the conversation in the public square, or we're abandoning our generation.
Love that. Let's talk a little bit about the podcast, Culture and Christianity. How's that going?
I've had a lot of fun with that. I've gotten to meet a lot of people who have remarkable God stories across a whole diverse array. You know, I got to know Brad Arnold, who was the lead singer for Three Doors Down. Mm-hmm. And I mean, he had a significant life transformation and began to talk about it in his concerts, in his rock concerts. I listened to him at Madison Square Garden, stop in the middle of this alternative music concert and start to talk about Jesus. And I was completely captivated by their courage. Last week I talked to a man who was born in Iran. His father was in the Iranian military under the Shah. And when the revolution took place, they fled the country for their safety, became Christians. I mean, it's a remarkable story. And every week I get to talk to these people, have these amazing God stories. And then we try to understand that in the context of what's happening in our world again, so that our faith doesn't just live in a Bible study, but it's lived out in the crucible of our real experiences.
So good. And you put it so well. Pastor Alan Jackson Ministries. Check out the book, Lead with Faith, Using Your Influence for God's Purposes. Last question, Pastor, before we go. What's next for you? We're getting the book out there. Folks are going to read it. Some transformation going on. What's next for you?
Well, we're expanding at the church again, but not just sanctuary space this time, but we're trying to create some tools to help people. There's a lot of learning that has gotten left out of our preparation, whether it's history or the story of the church. And so we're trying to build some tools to help people understand the value that Christianity and Jesus has brought to our lives, our homes, and our culture. So lately, I've just been encouraging people to have one meal a week at the table as a family with all the people who live under your roof. No devices. Once a week at the table, talk about what God's doing. It'll change your home.
Love that. When COVID was going on, you were generous with your time with us, and we interviewed you many times, and you were having services outside, which was really cool. I know there's a lot of moving parts in the whole thing. Are you still meeting outside from time to time?
We do, out of the COVID season, we came back with a new tradition. So every spring and every fall, we go outside for a season, for a festival. And our spring festival starts this Saturday night. We're outside for worship and church and back inside on Sunday. And we'll carry that through for a few weeks. Pat Barrett is our musical guest this weekend.
Wow.
So if you're in the Middle Tennessee area, come see us.
If I remember correctly, you also have baptisms outside through those seasons. And I love that you took the plunge at your church. I love those t-shirts. It's amazing. Pastor Alan Jackson, check out the book, Lead with Your Faith, Using Your Influence for God's Purposes, alanjackson.com, Amazon, or wherever you get your books. Next week, another great conversation with an amazing guest on Faith Talk Today. Till then, I'm Rick Probst. See ya.